Hello and welcome to this edition of Probation Matters, a podcast by the Probation Board for Northern Ireland, which tells the stories of how probation works within the justice system to change people's lives and help create safer communities. I'm Gail McGreevy, and it's a pleasure to be joined today by Laura Green, a probation officer based in our North Belfast team. And it's really timely today to be talking to Laura on what is Hidden Heroes Day, a day earmarked by the Butler Trust, which seeks to recognise the role played by people in probation, youth justice and prisons, and highlight the impact they make on people's lives. So welcome, Laura.
Thank you.
And maybe if we just begin by talking a little bit about what it's like to be a probation officer in the North Belfast team. Tell us a bit about your role.
So there's a lot of different roles in probation. So I suppose my job is to work partly for the courts. So we would do a lot of pre-sentence reports, kind of interviewing people about their backgrounds, about the offence, and analysing criminal records and things like that. But I also supervise those on licences and on probation orders or combination orders. So that would basically be us doing assessments and looking at all aspects of a person's life. So their accommodation, their childhood, substance misuse, mental health, getting an understanding of why a person's on probation and what has kind of been the reasoning that has got them to that point. We kind of do a lot of home visits, so I would be I would always like to get integrated into someone's life, see what their housing situation's like, because as we know, stability is one of the big factors that helps people avoid reoffending in the future. We would engage with services such as addictions, mental health. We would liaise with family, child protection services. We would also do a lot of intervention work. So we would do substance misuse intervention. We would do the lower level type of domestic intervention, such as respectful relationships, anger management work. So it's really about getting to know a person and looking at what we need to do to kind of address those risk factors that have caused their offending. So we wear a lot of different hats on a daily basis.
You certainly do.
So absolutely.
You do. And I suppose you chatted there a little bit about, some of the issues and the causes of offending behaviour, and that ties in with what we would see in terms of that increased complexity coming through. North Belfast is unique in terms of a community that's had its fair share of deprivation and lots of issues around, increased risk of suicide and mental health. Do you see that coming through in the caseload?
Absolutely. North Belfast has one of the highest rates of suicide in the whole of Europe. And I suppose that can kind of be linked in with trauma. So there would have been quite a high paramilitary presence, particularly within North Belfast. We would work in very highly areas where high deprivation exists, both sides of that. So we would absolutely see a lot of trauma, and suicide then would be linked in. And I think someone who works predominantly with males, it's about encouraging them to be open and talk about their feelings, because a lot of the time they don't actually have that opportunity to explore how they're feeling because they don't have that stable person in their lives. So and I think that's the importance of relationship-based practice. Building that relationship and building that trust really helps people open up to us and talk about what has happened in their lives. The suicide rates are something that's very worrying and something that's always at the forefront of my practice and others in North Belfast.
Yeah. And we've tried organisationally to start that journey, I suppose, of moving towards being a trauma-informed organisation, but there's lots to do around that, and
absolutely.
A huge amount. Can you see that starting to come into the work that you do, and how does that help staff and service users? There's lots of principles around psychological safety for staff and service users as well. Can you see that starting to come through?
Absolutely. I think just even recognising the trauma that someone has been through, and talking to them about, because a lot of the time they live such chaotic lives and they're so used to trauma, so they don't necessarily themselves identify it as trauma. And it's not until they're sitting down with us and we're able to say, well, actually, that's trauma, and these are the things that we can do to kind of address that. You know, a lot of the people I worked with would have post-traumatic stress disorder, you know, and that can be from adverse childhood experiences, it can be from deaths, it can be from, you know, involvement with paramilitaries, it can be a lot. It's very multifaceted, and there's lots of different types of trauma. So I think just understanding it and identifying it, and then, you know, validating their experience a lot of the time, and then getting support in is one of the things that starts to help us get into that trauma-informed practice, which is a part of the job that I really do enjoy, and I think it's really, really needed, because that is what is leading to offending, and leading to then negative coping strategies such as drug use and things like that. So if we're able to kind of identify the trauma, we can kind of then get the support in and help kind of encourage more positive coping strategies with that. So yeah, I am definitely trauma-informed practice is a big part of our work.
And relationships that you touched on as well is critical, and I suppose that's all part of the reason why every probation officer in Northern Ireland is a social worker, and you're a social worker, although that wasn't your first career. So maybe it'd be interesting just to talk a little bit about how and why you decided on this career, and how you came to be a probation officer.
So I suppose it came from both professional and voluntary. So I worked in several solicitors' offices in both Ballynahinch and Belfast areas. And I suppose when you're seeing clients coming in and you're getting to know clients, you're seeing that they're really socially excluded from society. And sometimes it's about us being able to kind of take that step back and understand why something has happened. You know, when I was working within the legal sector, I suppose I not having that background of social work, you're making a snapshot judgment. But once you actually sit down with people and find out, well, actually, why have we gotten to this point? And I think that's where my passion really started. To help people. And I think, as I explained it, it's like that iceberg analogy. You know, most people see the top of the iceberg with the offence, but nobody really looks at the underneath of the iceberg that nobody can see is what actually has went on to cause that. And the more I spoke to people, the more I found out that, you know, it was homelessness, it was addiction, it was, you know, childhood adversity, no stable parent, grief, loss. There was so much that, you know, one person was going through. And then I started obviously volunteering for FASA, which was an organisation in North Belfast that dealt with suicide and drug addiction, because the two go hand in hand together. And I think that's one thing that we need more support with in services is the dual diagnosis work, particularly in Northern Ireland. Because it's that vicious cycle that people are caught up on. There's a trauma that's happened, and then they're using those maladaptive coping mechanisms such as addictions, drugs, to get through that. So I think my passion really kind of started looking at how socially excluded clients can be, and just trying to understand and advocate as best I can for changes and for support to prevent them coming back through those same systems.
And do you see that change? Are you able to see people been facilitated through the change process, and, you know, those positive outcomes? And it won't all be positive outcomes, but have you seen that and had that experience of people being able to turn their lives around?
Absolutely. You know, I have clients maybe that have came through probation and have done so, and at the end they're saying, I've never felt listened to as much as I did here. And I've never actually been able to understand why I got to that point. And I mean, even if you look at my desk, the amount of thank you cards that we have, because we are taking the time to get to know people. And, you know, that's why I believe integrating into their life is so important. Going out into the community, going to their home, getting to know their family, engaging with their services. We're getting a full picture of actually what is going on. And I'm absolutely seeing the change. Like, I have a lot of clients that haven't went on to reoffend and actually phone me in a year to say, Laura, I'm doing really well, you'd be really proud of me. And, you know, it's great to get those wee updates from clients just to hear how well they're doing, and it's great to be a part of that change.
That is really good, and to be able to just feel like you're making a difference is important. And today is Hidden Heroes Day, So maybe, will you tell me a little bit about the team in North Belfast that you're working in? I have to say, I think every probation officer that comes through these doors is a hidden hero. Absolutely. In terms of what they're doing. It's a heavy responsibility at times, the work that you carry out. But tell me a bit about the team and, you know, some of the efforts that you do make and some of what you deal with.
The team are fantastic. I mean, I wouldn't be able to do this job without the team that I have. As you say, it's a very difficult job because we have multiple roles. We protect the public. That's one of our main roles, is the protection of the public, and also rehabilitation. We have social workers and probation officers that come from so many different backgrounds. My background in social work is child protection. There's others who have addiction, mental health. You know, going to them and getting their advice from working with those services. And each person also has different life experiences, different family members who've maybe, you know, had difficulties and how they've kind of dealt with that. But I think we have a really supportive team, and we take time out to check in with each other. So often, you know, a few times a month we'll have tea and cake as a check-in, because it's so important that our mental health is in a good place to be able to create that change. And dealing with the trauma that we take on can be very difficult. But I think having that team and, you know, being able to kind of check in. I'm the wellbeing officer for North Belfast. So I try to do different wee activities, and especially in team meetings, we'll always tell each other when we've really seen good practice, you know, and if you're going through difficulty, just sending a wee text or an email to say, we're always here if you need us. Our managers are fantastic, have an open door policy. Nothing's an issue. You can go in and have a chat, and the advice is always brilliant. Our AD is the same, you know, eating is always contactable. So it's just a brilliant atmosphere, and a really, really great team to be a part of. And I say positive practice every day. And, you know, probation officers go in that extra mile for clients. Biggest things or the smallest things, you know, getting food bank support, bringing it out to their home, being there when things, you know, sitting in hospital with clients when their mental health is deteriorating, you know, just a great team. The
unseen and unheard a lot of the time.
Absolutely.
That don't make the headlines necessarily, but it's
Absolutely.
that work that goes on below the radar that just
Absolutely.
on a day and daily basis. And I suppose, you know, it is hard at times to explain to the public the role of probation, and it's, you know, it's hard to raise awareness of the work. And I suppose if you had a message for the public about the type of work that you do and your colleagues do, what would that message be around the work of probation?
I think we do everything, and that is an honest answer. We wear different hats every minute of every day. You know, we are housing officers, we are addiction counsellors, we fight to get people the proper diagnoses that they, you know, deserve to have in terms of learning disability or mental health. We are there to pick them up when they're low or when things are going back down. We're there for family to contact us and tell us, I'm really worried, go out, have the meeting. You know, we're there for the courts. We provide, you know, such professional reports, given overviews. I mean, what don't we do is, I think, you know, it would be a shorter answer, Gail, to be honest, than what we do. I think we're involved in every aspect, child protection, going to meetings, helping clients understand what other professionals are saying sometimes as well. You know, because clients will come to me after a meeting and go, I don't know what that was about, and just taking the time to go, okay, this is what's going on and this is what's said. So yeah, in every role, I think we're massive advocates for our clients, but we also really hold the victims as the centre of our work as well. And I think that's why we put so much time and effort into our clients, because we don't want there to be more victims. And if we're actually taking a step back and understanding people's lives, we're helping the community, we're helping the families, we're helping our clients, we're helping victims. And I think that's why it's so important, the work that we do.
It's that dual role, isn't it, that
Absolutely.
You're just describing there, that supporting them where you can, and when you can't support them any longer, that accountability and enforcement piece that's so critical as well. And your background in terms of, some of the work you've done with children's services, I suppose, has helped you understand how key and critical child protection and public protection is. And we recently had a Criminal Justice Inspectorate report follow-up review, which showed improvements in practice, although we've always got more to do. But in terms of your own practice, I suppose, and that time you spent with Gateway and Children's Services, how's that helped you with things like professional curiosity and just following up on safeguarding and public protection issues?
Massively. Gateway is, it's twofold, the same as probation. It's protecting those in need of protection and also supporting those in need of support. And that's very much probation. And I think professional curiosity is such an important part of our role. Serious case reviews obviously normally highlight that there wasn't enough professional curiosity or enough questions asked or understanding of someone's life. So I think for me, that's why I get, integrate really into my clients' lives, because seeing them in an office, they're not going to be the same in the community. So I think getting out and about, spending time, in the home, in the family, looking at speaking with professionals particularly for me is a really important point, because, some clients might feel more comfortable opening up to another service, might not be at that point with us yet. So I think, having that conversation, asking what are you doing, what's the work you're doing, what's the risks that you guys are seeing, because everybody is going to have a different opinion. So professional curiosity is massively important, and I think that's, at my point around public protection, that's our first and foremost role, and what we're always kind of looking at is how do we best protect the public, and it's looking at all the issues which I've highlighted as to what has went on to cause those offences. But yes, a massive overlap in both.
I mean, there's just so much there. There's just so much that you've touched on. And I suppose just a message for anybody maybe thinking about probation as a career. Has it been worthwhile? Is it fulfilling? And what have you got out of it?
Absolutely. I would tell anyone to come into probation. I think, as I said, being able to see that change in someone, and sometimes being the first person that you're listening to someone and really taking in what they're saying. I go home with a real sense of, I'm doing good here. I'm making change, and so I would tell anyone who's thinking of a career in probation to definitely to come in and try it. The experience you get is second to none, and the change you make is also second to none. And I'm really proud to be a probation officer.
Laura, that's been just really interesting talking to you today, and I'm always inspired when I'm talking to members of our staff, because I think you do an incredible job. So thank you for spending time today, giving us an insight into your work and your role as a probation officer in North Belfast. It's incredibly interesting and just such powerful work that you do. So to find out more about probation and some of the other areas that we work in, you can log on to our website at pbni.org.uk. You can follow us on social media platforms, X, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn and YouTube.